edgy. Like many of the terms I cover, is primarily used by Western audiences, as edgy is just the Japanese pronunciation of the letter H,
Ecchi,
which stands for hentai. Hence why there is a discrepancy between the Western use of the word ecchi and the Japanese use. In Japan, it's an abbreviation of the hentai genre, while in the West, ecchi is this in-between spot between family-friendly animation and animated porn, with mostly televised anime where sexuality is present but not fully and explicitly shown. Porn has existed since ancient times. Hell, prostitution is the oldest profession in the world. So you get me when I say it's old, even existing on several older Japanese art forms like ukiyo-e. But after the Second World War and Japan's new outlook on the world, perversion wasn't really high up in the priority when it came to this new form of media that started to take off, called manga. The first time the Japanese reading manga world was introduced to a bit of erotica was as Pi, a collection of one-shots released between 1965 and 1967, where some of the one-shots showed curvy women in revealing clothes and even nudity at several points. However, the first serialized manga to introduce a bit of edginess in it was Go Nagai's manga Shameless School, where you can already see the sheer difference in how he draws men versus women, and in volume 2 onward starts to introduce its female audience in less and less clothing. Nagai in the same year surpassed Shameless School's sexuality and came out with Jo Shoujo UFO, upping the details of the drawn nudity, and from here on out, it was free game for more mature aligned mangakas to create series with nudity in it. So much so that in 1973, the first erotic Gekika magazine started, called Erotopia. During this time, if you wanted sexually drawn characters in your comics, you could only find them in Gekika-style comics and magazines. Though during the 1980s, when the younger characters started being seen as more desirable, and anime-style illustrations became more popular, making Gekika, a more mature and realistic drawing style, unnecessary, even for erotica-driven stories, and eventually even became obsolete during this very decade, making way for a new era of more colorful and animated spectacle. During the 1970s, one of Go Nagai's manga, Cutie Honey, got its own anime adaptation. Cutie Honey is a more mature and erotic take on the magical girl genre, drawn by the same guy who introduced the serialized manga world to the ecchi genre. In 1980s, multimedia started to be the norm. Gone was the boring books, we got animation and video games. And the first erotic Japanese video game was Yakyuken in 1981, starting a long and lasting legacy of video games colloquially known as eroge. With more and more erotic manga being adapted into anime, the norm started to change, while animation for television had to follow a set of rules, so no super explicit visuals could ever be shown. At least not as explicit as manga or eroge, which had far less strict regulations. So a new form of distribution came, direct-to-DVD anime, also known as OVA. And one of the trendsetters distributed this way was Lolita Anime in 1984, also known as the first hentai. It, together with Cream Lemon, are known as the grandparents of hentai and ecchi, birthing this new genre into existence. However, they were still limited by two things: technology and budget. Luckily, both these problems would be solved very soon. While OVAs were already a thing in the 80s, from 1986 throughout most of 1990s, Japan faced the Heisei boom, an economic miracle that caused the Japanese people and companies to almost have more money than they know what to do with it. So a lot of people invested into these OVAs, promoting sales in home video hardware, but also increasing the production in technology going into the creation of OVAs. One of the most impactful OVAs during this era was Gunbuster in 1988, giving us for the first time ever 2D animated breast physics. And you might think, but Dirk, if animated ecchi already existed decades before the release of Gunbuster, surely someone must have animated a jiggle, a wiggle, a bounce or a pounce, but nope. I personally checked and each and every depiction of a woman was as stiff and motionless as a Barbie doll. Now, from 1988 onward, it was the era, the golden age of OVAs, with numerous and countless of OVAs that deserve respect both as a form of art and as a form of art. Either way, this era gave people inside and outside of Japan a taste of animated erotica, and people wanted more.
Allow me to reintroduce myself. My name is...
After the boom, OVAs died down as they were too costly to continuously produce and didn't raise enough money to make them worthwhile. So a lot of the more focus was put on televised anime. That meant if sexiness was involved, then it had to follow the rules of the broadcaster, the time slot or whatever else. Meaning it couldn't just go fully nude all the time. But sex sells, so they had to work around that. And during this time it was mostly teasing the sexual aspect by having animated breast bounce, panty shots, but any actual nudity would be censored by hair, steam or just not shown at all. And either saving the actual explicit stuff for OVAs, DVD and Blu-ray boxes, or they just left them out entirely. This era of teasing sexuality is how the modern and western version of ecchi came to be, becoming a separate category in several anime and manga indexing websites like MyAnimeList and Anime Planet, and seeing it differently than just hentai. And the term also spread through forums and messaging boards, either not understanding the original definition or just running with it knowing you're wrong. But thanks to the advent of streaming services and online distribution, a lot of anime can dare to be a bit more provocative with a censored version on TV and uncensored online. And now on top of having occasional R-rated OVAs, we now also have animations that go straight to streaming, also known as ONAs. We are entering a new age of acceptable explicit content, building off the back of lonely broadcasting stations like ATX that provided us with years of uncensored anime like High School DxD, Ikitosen, Elfenlied, and more recent hits like Redo of Healer and Interspecies Reviewers. Ecchi in its modern shell is basically everywhere, from One Piece to Cyberpunk, from Kaguya to... let's see here... oh yeah, Alia hides her feelings in Russian. Whoa. You can't watch 10 shows without running into some form of ecchi content, and some see the appeal while others find it uncomfortable. Well, for me, ecchi stands for the hero we need in anime.